Some calls are never meant to be answered. The closet smelled like dust and old wood, the kind that clung to your throat and made every breath feel louder than it should be. And I pressed my hand gently over Noah's mouth as his tiny chest rose too fast, too sharp, like he was trying to outrun the silence. While Liam gripped my sleeve so tightly, I could feel his fingers shaking through the fabric. Both of them curled into me in the dark, both of them trusting me to keep the world outside from reaching in, and I told myself the same thing. Over and over, just stay quiet, just stay still, just a few more minutes, and it will pass. But the footsteps outside didn't pass. They slowed, heavy and deliberate, like whoever was out there already knew exactly where we were, and my heart started pounding so hard I was sure it would give us away before anything else did. I could hear the faint hum of the city 12 floors below, distant sirens, a car horn somewhere far off. Life continuing like nothing was wrong while my entire world held its breath inside this narrow space. And then I felt it. The shift. The moment when fear stops being a possibility and becomes something real, something right outside the door, and Noah moved. Just a little, enough for his elbow to bump against my bag. And before I could stop him, before I could even whisper his name, I heard it, the soft click of a screen lighting up, his small voice barely louder than a breath as he said, "Mom, it's ringing." And everything inside me went cold, because there was only one number saved like that. Only one name I had never deleted, never changed, never dared to explain, and I reached for the phone too late. The line already connected, the silence on the other end stretching just long enough to feel like something was listening, something waiting. And then Liam leaned closer, his voice trembling but curious, innocent in a way that made my chest ache, and he whispered into the darkness, "Daddy, are you coming?" And somewhere miles away, in a world I had run from, a man I had prayed would never find us again finally heard the one thing I could never take back. I did not breathe as the line stayed open, the silence on the other end stretching so long it felt alive, like it was listening back. And then a voice came through, low and controlled, the kind of voice that did not ask questions twice. "Who is this?" And every memory I had buried clawed its way to the surface all at once. The late nights, the promises I did not believe, the man I had walked away from without looking back, and now he was here, not in front of me yet, but closer than he had ever been in 5 years. And Liam shifted beside me, unaware of the weight of what he had just done, his small hand gripping the phone as he whispered again, softer this time, "Are you our dad?" And I felt my chest tighten so hard it almost hurt, because there it was, the truth I had kept hidden wrapped in a child's question, simple and impossible at the same time. And on the other end the silence changed, not empty anymore, but sharp, focused, like something had just locked into place, and I could hear it in the way he exhaled, slow and deliberate, like he was steadying something inside himself. "Where are you?" he said, not to the boys, not really, but to me, because he knew. Somehow he always knew when it mattered. And I shook my head even though he could not see me, my hand trembling as I tried to take the phone back. But Noah held onto my sleeve, his voice breaking just enough to reveal the fear he was trying so hard to hide. "There are people outside," he whispered, and that was the moment everything changed, because I heard it then. Not just footsteps anymore, but the faint sound of a door handle testing, a quiet pressure against the lock like someone checking, waiting, deciding, and my heart dropped into my stomach as I realized we were out of time. And the voice on the phone did not hesitate, did not question, did not doubt. "Stay where you are," he said, firm and absolute. Like it was not a suggestion, but a rule the world itself would follow. And I wanted to argue, to tell him he did not get to give orders anymore, not after everything. But the words never came, because deep down I knew one thing I had never been able to forget. When Adrian Volkov decided something, it happened, no matter the distance, no matter the cost, and outside the closet the sound stopped completely, a silence so heavy it pressed against my ears, and then slowly, carefully, the handle began to turn. I felt the exact moment the world tilted, the second when the handle stopped being just a sound and became a countdown, slow and deliberate as it turned inch by inch, and inside the closet everything shrank down to breath and heartbeat, and the warmth of two small bodies pressed against me. Liam's fingers clutching my wrist while Noah buried his face into my shoulder, and I forced myself to stay still even as every instinct screamed to run. But there was nowhere to run, nowhere to go that would not lead them straight to us. And the phone was still in my hand, still connected. His presence on the other end quiet but unmistakable, like a shadow stretching across miles. And then his voice came again, softer this time, but somehow heavier. "Listen to me," he said, and I closed my eyes for a split second because I knew that tone, the one that never left room for doubt. "Do not open that door, no matter what you hear." And I almost laughed at that, a bitter, silent breath against Noah's hair. Because he still thought I had a choice. He still thought this was something I could control. And then the door outside creaked, not fully open but enough to let in the sound of movement. Careful steps crossing the floor, the faint rustle of fabric, someone searching, someone patient, and my heart slammed harder as I tightened my arms around the boys, counting their breaths, trying to keep them steady, trying to pretend this was just another night, just another moment that would pass. But nothing about this felt like it would pass. And on the phone I heard something shift, not around him, but because of him, the subtle change of a man who had already made a decision. "Emily," he said, and my name in his voice felt like a line drawn across time, sharp and unbreakable, and I froze because he never said my name unless it mattered, unless everything depended on it. "I am already on my way." And the words landed heavier than anything else, heavier than the footsteps outside, heavier than the fear pressing against my ribs, because I knew what that meant. I knew what followed when Adrian Volkov moved, and I did not know if that made us safer or if it made everything worse. And then Liam lifted his head just enough to whisper, his voice small, but steady in a way that broke something inside me. "Is he really coming?" And I could not answer him. Not yet. Not when the footsteps outside stopped directly in front of the closet door. Not when the air itself seemed to hold still. And then a voice from the other side spoke, calm and unfamiliar. "I know you are in there." And before I could react, before I could even breathe, the line in my hand tightened with his presence, and Adrian's voice dropped into something cold and certain. "They will not touch you," he said, not loud, not rushed, just absolute. And for the first time since this started, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not relief, but something far more dangerous. The realization that whether I wanted it or not, he had already found us. The silence after that voice felt louder than anything before it, thick and suffocating as it pressed against my ears, and I could feel Liam's heartbeat through his small hand wrapped around mine, fast and uneven, matching the rhythm of my own, while Noah stayed completely still against me like he understood without words that even the smallest movement could change everything. And outside the closet the presence did not move away, did not rush, just waited, patient in a way that made it worse. As if whoever stood there already believed time was on their side. And I realized then that this was not a chase anymore. It was a corner, a final narrowing of space until there was nowhere left to hide. And on the phone I heard nothing for a second, then the faintest sound of movement, not from hesitation but from action already in motion, doors opening somewhere far away, voices speaking quickly and quietly around him. And then his voice returned, lower now, closer somehow, even across the distance. "Emily, listen carefully," he said, and I swallowed hard because I had not heard him say my name like that in years, not since before everything broke. "You are not alone anymore." And the words landed in a place I had tried to seal off, a place that remembered what it felt like to believe him. And I shook my head slightly even though he could not see it, because belief was dangerous. Belief was what had made me leave in the first place. But before I could answer, before I could even think, the voice outside the closet spoke again, softer this time, almost calm. "You cannot stay hidden forever." And something in the way he said it made my chest tighten. Not just fear but recognition of a different kind of threat, one that waited instead of forced, one that expected you to come out on your own. And I felt Liam shift as he whispered, barely audible, "Mom, I am scared." And I pressed my forehead gently against his, forcing my voice to stay steady even as everything inside me trembled. "I know, baby, I know," I whispered back. And then Noah's small fingers tugged at my sleeve as he leaned closer to the phone, his voice quiet but clear. "Are you close?" he asked, and for a second there was nothing, just the sound of distance. And then Adrian answered, not rushed, not uncertain, just absolute in a way that made the air in my lungs feel different. "Closer than you think," he said, and something shifted again, Not outside the closet, not yet, but inside me, a realization I had been avoiding since the call connected, that this was no longer just about running or hiding or surviving one more night. This was about a line I could not cross. Back over, because if he reached us, if he saw them, if he looked into their eyes and recognized what I had kept from him, then everything I had built to keep them safe would change in a way I could never undo. And the handle in front of us moved again, just slightly, enough to remind me that whatever choice I thought I had was already slipping away. And then from the other side came a quiet breath, followed by the softest words yet. "Open the door, Emily." And my entire world seemed to stop, between one heartbeat and the next. I did not move when I heard my name from the other side, not because I did not want to, but because something deep inside me refused to accept it, refused to believe that after everything, after years of silence and distance, it could still sound like that, steady and certain and dangerously familiar. And my fingers tightened around Liam and Noah, as if holding them closer could somehow hold back the moment that was already unfolding. And for a second, I almost convinced myself that I was imagining it. That fear was twisting my mind, until the voice came again, softer this time, but closer, so much closer than it should have been. "Emily," and my breath caught because there was no distance in it anymore, no phone delay, no separation, just presence, right outside, right there. And the phone in my hand felt suddenly useless as the realization hit me all at once. He was no longer miles away, he had already arrived. And Noah lifted his head slightly, his small voice barely more than a whisper as he asked, "Is that him?" And I could not answer, not when the air itself seemed to shift, not when every instinct I had was telling me that the world outside that door had just changed in a way I could not undo. And then something unexpected happened. The other presence outside, the one that had been waiting, the one that had spoken before, stepped back, not in fear but in recognition, as if something had entered the room that even they understood without needing to see. And silence followed, heavy but different now, no longer suffocating but charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. And my heart pounded harder as I realized what that meant. Not safety, not yet, but a shift in control. And I heard it then, the faint sound of movement in the apartment, not rushed, not chaotic, just precise, measured steps that carried a kind of authority that did not need to announce itself. And I closed my eyes for a split second because I knew that walk. I remembered it in ways I had tried to forget. And Liam's grip on my hand tightened as he whispered, "Mom, what do we do?" And for the first time since this started, I did not have an answer, because every choice led to the same place. Every path ended with the same truth I had been running from for years, and slowly, almost without realizing it, my hand moved toward the closet door, my fingers hovering just inches from the handle as my pulse echoed in my ears. And behind it I could feel him, not see him yet, but feel him there, waiting, not forcing, not rushing, just certain that this moment would come. And the thought hit me all at once, sharp and undeniable, that he had never been the kind of man you could truly run from, only the kind you could delay. And now that delay was over. And Noah's small voice broke through my thoughts, softer than before but filled with something new, something like hope. "Daddy," he whispered again. And that word, spoken so simply, so naturally, was the final crack in everything I had built. And my hand finally touched the handle, cold under my fingers as I realized there was no version of this where things stayed the same, no version where I could keep them hidden any longer. And as I slowly began to turn it, one truth settled deep in my chest, quiet but unshakable, that the moment this door opened, their lives would no longer belong only to me. The handle turned with a soft click that sounded louder than anything else in the room. And for a moment, I did not open it all the way, just enough to let a thin line of light slip into the darkness, enough to see the outline of a figure standing on the other side, tall and still, like he had been waiting there not for seconds but for years. And my breath caught as that line of light widened, slowly, carefully, until there was no more barrier between us. And I saw him, Adrian Volkov, exactly as I remembered, and yet not at all, sharper somehow, colder at the edges, his dark eyes locking onto mine first with a kind of quiet intensity that made everything else fade. The apartment, the footsteps, the fear, all of it reduced to the space between us. And for a second neither of us spoke, not because there was nothing to say, but because there was too much, Too many years, too many choices, too many things left unfinished. And then his gaze shifted, just slightly, dropping past me into the small space behind, and I felt the moment it happened, the exact second he saw them, really saw them, not as shadows or voices on a phone, but as two small boys pressed close together, their identical eyes looking back at him with a mixture of fear and something else, something softer, something that did not belong to this world I had tried to keep them away from. And his entire body went still in a way I had never seen before, not tension, not control, but something deeper, something that reached beyond all of that. And Liam was the first to move, just a small step forward, his fingers loosening from my sleeve as he tilted his head slightly, studying the man in front of him with a kind of quiet curiosity that made my chest tighten. And then he asked it, simple and direct, like only a child could, "Are you him?" And Adrian did not answer right away, his eyes moving between them, taking in every detail, every feature, every reflection of himself that stood in front of him without asking permission. And I watched as something shifted behind his gaze, something that cracked through the calm surface he always held so perfectly. And when he finally spoke, his voice was lower than before, not because he was unsure, but because the weight of the moment demanded it. "I am," he said, and Noah stepped closer now, just half a step, enough to reach out without fully committing, his small hand hovering in the air, as if he was not sure if this was real, if this was something he was allowed to touch. And I wanted to stop him, wanted to pull him back, to hold on to the last piece of control I had left, but I could not move. Not when I saw the way Adrian's expression changed, not dramatically, not obviously, just enough to reveal something I had never seen in him before, something unguarded, something human. And slowly, carefully, he lowered himself just slightly, enough to meet their height without towering over them, without overwhelming them. And Noah's fingers finally brushed against his hand, a small, tentative contact that seemed to echo far louder than it should have. And in that single moment, everything I had tried to protect, everything I had tried to hide, became undeniable, and Adrian's eyes lifted back to mine, not questioning, not accusing, just certain. And I knew without him saying a single word that he understood exactly what he was looking at, exactly what I had kept from him, and exactly what that meant moving forward. For a moment, no one moved. Not me, not the boys, not even him. As if the world itself had paused to understand what had just happened, and I could feel it in the air, that shift, that irreversible change that came not from words but from recognition, from the quiet certainty in Adrian's eyes as he looked at them and saw himself reflected back in a way that could not be denied. And I wanted to say something, anything to break it, to take control of the moment before it slipped completely out of my hands. But the words stayed locked in my throat because deep down I knew there was nothing I could say that would undo this, nothing that would make him unsee what he had already seen. And Liam took another small step forward, his hand now resting more firmly in Adrian's, his fear still there, but softened by curiosity, by something instinctive that pulled him closer instead of pushing him away. And Noah followed, just slightly behind, his eyes searching Adrian's face as if he was trying to find something specific, something he had imagined before this moment. And Adrian did not pull away, did not hesitate, his hands steady beneath theirs, his gaze moving between them with a focus that felt almost unreal, like he was memorizing every detail in real time. And then he spoke again, quieter than before but heavier. "How old are you?" he asked, not because he needed the answer, but because he needed to hear it, needed to place them within the years he had lost. And Liam answered first, his voice small but clear, 5. And the number seemed to settle into the space between us like something tangible, something that carried weight far beyond its simplicity. 5 years, 5 years of absence, 5 years of silence, 5 years of a life he had not known existed. And I saw it then, not in his expression but in the stillness of him, the way his shoulders held just a fraction tighter, the way his eyes darkened not with anger but with something deeper, something that did not have a name yet. And finally I found my voice, though it came out softer than I intended. "I did what I had to do," I said, not as a defense, but as a truth I had lived with every day since I left. And his gaze lifted to meet mine again, steady and unreadable. But there was no accusation in it, no immediate demand, just that same certainty that had always defined him. And for a second, I almost wished he would be angry, that he would raise his voice or question me, because that would have been easier, simpler, something I knew how to face. But instead, he just looked at me, really looked at me, and then at them again. And when he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made everything else fall away. "You should have told me," he said, not harsh, not loud, just absolute. And I felt it settle deep in my chest because I knew he was right in a way I could not argue against. And yet I also knew why I had not, why I could not. And the silence that followed stretched between us, filled with everything neither of us was saying, until Noah's small voice broke through again, softer now but certain. "Are you staying?" he asked, and that question, so simple and innocent, landed heavier than anything else, because it was not just a question for him. It was a question for me, for all of us, and Adrian did not hesitate this time, not even for a second, his answer immediate and unwavering. "I am not going anywhere," he said, and in that moment I realized something that both steadied and unsettled me at the same time. That whatever came next, whatever choices we made from here, there was no going back to the life we had before this door opened. His words did not echo, they settled, deep and unmoving, like something that had already decided its place in our lives. And I felt Liam's hand tighten around his, as if he understood that promise in a way I could not explain, while Noah stayed close to my side, his fingers still gripping my sleeve, but his eyes fixed on Adrian with a kind of quiet wonder that made my chest ache. And for a moment the world outside the apartment seemed to fade. The tension, the unknown voices, the reason we had been hiding in the first place, all of it pushed to the edges by something far more immediate, far more complicated, the presence of a man who belonged to them in a way I could not undo. And I forced myself to breathe, to remember that nothing about this was simple, that his arrival did not erase the danger, it only changed its shape. And as if on cue, the faint sound of movement returned from the other room, subtle, but enough to pull me back into reality, and Adrian's expression shifted instantly, not dramatically but precisely, his attention sharpening as he turned his head slightly toward the sound, listening in a way that felt practiced, controlled. And I saw it then, the other side of him, the part one had tried to keep far away from the boys, the part that noticed everything and missed nothing. And without raising his voice, without even looking away completely, he spoke, "Stay behind me." And the words were not directed at me alone, they were for all of us. And before I could respond, before I could question it, Liam moved instinctively, stepping just slightly closer to Adrian while still holding onto his hand, and Noah followed, slower but certain, and I hesitated for half a second before stepping forward as well, closing the distance because whether I liked it or not, standing apart no longer made sense, not now, not when everything had already shifted. And Adrian took one step forward, placing himself between us and the rest of the apartment, not in a way that blocked us, but in a way that shielded us. And it was subtle, almost effortless. But I felt it, that shift in position that spoke louder than anything else he had said. And for a moment I forgot to be afraid, because that was what he had always done. Even before I understood what it meant, he positioned himself where the impact would land first, where the risk would meet him before it reached anyone else. And the sound outside paused again, as if whoever was there sensed it too, sensed that something had changed, that the situation was no longer what it had been just minutes ago. And then a voice came from the other room, cautious now, no longer certain. "You are not alone." And I felt Liam glance up at Adrian, his voice small but steady as he asked, "Are they going to come in?" And Adrian's gaze dropped briefly to him, just enough to meet his eyes. And there was something in that look, something calm and unwavering that seemed to steady even me. "No," he said, simple and absolute. And for the first time since this began, I believed it, not because the situation was safe, not because the danger had disappeared, but because of the way he said it, like it was not a hope or a guess but a fact already decided. And as the silence stretched once more, I realized that the world we had been hiding from had finally caught up to us, but it had not found us unprotected. The quiet stretched longer than it should have, not empty but waiting, like the entire apartment was holding its breath to see what would happen next. And I could feel it in the way Liam's fingers tightened around Adrian's hand, in the way Noah leaned just slightly closer to me, but did not look away from him. And I realized something then that I had been too afraid to admit before, that they were not just seeing a stranger. They were recognizing something that belonged to them even. Without explanation, and Adrian did not move from where he stood, his presence steady and unshaken. But his attention was everywhere at once, on the boys, on me, on the space beyond us, as if he was holding all of it together without effort. And then the sound came again, softer this time, a shift from the other room, followed by footsteps that no longer approached but retreated, slow and careful, like whoever had been there had made a decision of their own. And I felt the tension ease just slightly, not disappear, but loosen enough for me to finally breathe without it catching in my chest. And Adrian's gaze followed the direction of the sound for a moment before returning to us, confirming something silently that he did not need to say out loud. And Liam was the first to notice, his voice small but hopeful as he asked, "They are leaving?" And Adrian gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. "Yes," he said. And the simplicity of that answer carried more reassurance than anything else could have. And Noah let out a breath he had been holding, his shoulders relaxing just enough to show it, while I stood there trying to understand how everything had shifted so quickly, how the fear that had been pressing in on us moments ago now felt distant, replaced by something far more complicated, something I could not run from or hide inside a closet. And Adrian finally moved then, not stepping away but turning slightly toward me, his eyes meeting mine with that same quiet intensity. And for a second the world narrowed again to just that look, just that connection that had never truly disappeared no matter how far I had gone. And he spoke, not loudly, not forcefully, but with a certainty that left no room for misunderstanding. "This is not where you stay," he said, and I knew immediately what he meant. Not just this apartment, not just tonight, but everything. The life I had built, the distance I had created, all of it. And I felt the instinct to push back rise up, to tell him he did not get to decide that. Not after 5 years. Not after everything I had done to protect them. But the words did not come. Because standing there with Liam and Noah between us, I could see it clearly for the first time, that this was never just my decision anymore. Never just my life to control. And Liam looked up at me then, his expression open and trusting in a way that made my chest tighten. "Mom," he said softly, "he found us." And there was no fear in his voice, only a kind of quiet certainty, and I realized that to him. This was not something to run from. It was something that had finally arrived. And Adrian's hand remained steady around his, not pulling, not forcing, just there, present and undeniable. And as I looked between them, between the life I had tried to build and the truth I could no longer deny, one thought settled deep inside me, clear and inescapable, that the night I had spent years running from had not come to destroy us. It had come to change everything, and whether I was ready or not, there was no closing that door again.